Good evening and welcome into the Fantasy Express. I am your host, Steven Sobek, and this is actually the last time that I will be behind the controls for the Fantasy Express, but we will leave you in good hands as both Robert Segovia and Blake the Hound Dog Dollier will be back next year. Guys, how you doing?
Feeling pretty good. Just, finishing up some schoolwork. Finals is coming up, so that's going to be a little tough for this last going, but I'm feeling pretty good today. How about you, Blake?
I'm feeling pretty good as well. I know the finals week coming up, and with all these projects, it does make for things to become a little bit stressful, but in the end, it'll all be worth it, and getting to take a break and talk a little NFL draft is kind of nice to keep your mind off of things.
Yes, we have an NFL draft special for you here on the Fantasy Express. We've gone ahead and we're going to take you through all 32 picks of the first round and do our best to try and project what teams will do. We ran a little bit of a mock draft earlier, so we will run through our selections, what we think will happen. Tomorrow night, the first round gets started. You can watch that at 8 o'clock approximately on ESPN, NFL Network, and or Fox. 8 o'clock, but you know how they like to put Cleveland on the clock for, a half an hour before they get to make their selection? I feel like this is the Cleveland Browns Super Bowl draft night.
Well, it seems to be, as they seem to be the NFL draft champions most of the time, getting the higher up picks, but with the first overall pick in the Fantasy Express draft, if you will, the Cleveland Browns will select quarterback Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma. He had 43 touchdowns, 6 interceptions last season, and overall just a really well-rounded player. He is a bit undersized at 6'1", but he weighs in at 220, and he's got some arm strength to him. And granted, he may be injury prone a little bit with that smaller size, but as strong as he is, that may not be an issue.
Well, Blake got us going right off the top of the show. Jump right into the first pick, which is perfect. Baker Mayfield to the Cleveland Browns. And really, Baker Mayfield, he's an interesting NFL prospect. And Robert, I want to hear what you have to say before we move on to your selection. He's had some issues off the field. And on the field, known for his antics. How is he going to be able to channel those types of behaviors going pro and really perhaps being the face of this franchise?
Well, Baker Mayfield he led the team, Oklahoma, to an amazing season, had a ton of good stats, but you're right that energy is going to have to be tamed for him to succeed in the NFL, and I feel like the Jets need a little bit of a spark, but if he's too much, I think that it could become a problem very quickly.
Right, and that's always a concern, but he did lead his team to the college football playoff. So he definitely has the experience in pressure situations, and he can deliver. So again, in a quarterback-heavy draft, first overall pick, likely down to either Baker Mayfield or Josh Allen. At least that's what sources are saying. So Blake's going to go ahead and say that Baker Mayfield is who the Browns will pick. We're going to go with Robert's selection at 2. We have the New York Giants now on the board. What we're going to do is we're going to go just in order: Blake, Robert, me, and repeat the process all the way through 32, just so we're clear on the format. And maybe we'll see a couple of trades. Mm-hmm. We shall see. But all right, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so the New York Giants, 3-13. They were 31st in offense last season, and they really need a bit of a boost in the offensive game. And, you hear a lot of talk about QBs in these first few draft picks, but I think they're going to go with Saquon Barkley. They really need an offensive presence like Barkley. He did really well in the Combine last season. He was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, 6th in FBS with 18 rushing touchdowns in the regular season. And not only that, but he can get open in the passing game too. So I really like him as a rushing and passing threat. So and he also majored in journalism, so a little bit of a relating factor for me with
there's
Barkley.
a little bit of bias, perhaps,
Oh, yeah.
but certainly deserving of the second overall selection. We look at the team needs for the Giants, and right now, they're listed at quarterback, offensive line, and primarily running back are the three positional needs that they could address with this second overall selection. And it'll be interesting to see if they try to draft the successor to Eli Manning. Blake, if they go the quarterback route, saying either Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield are off the board already, who do you see the Giants possibly going with?
Well, they have the potential if those two are not on the table at the time. They do have Sam Darnold out of USC. He may not be ready for the pros, is what a lot of people are saying, but he may be a good option to, sit and watch and under the direction of two-time Super Bowl champion Eli Manning for a couple of years until Manning is ready to hang up his cleats. And maybe that experience would be beneficial to him going into the future and maybe eventually carry the Giants to more Super Bowls. Who knows?
You bring up a good quarterback in Darnold, obviously, somebody who will be taken at the top end of the draft, no question. However, for me, and this is just personal opinion, I think that if you're going to look for somebody who fits the prototype of an Eli Manning, you're going to go with Josh Rosen. Guy has a really fluid motion. He is the most NFL ready at this point, and in this draft. And so those two things, coupled with the fact that really, I think he looks like Eli out there on the field, lacking in mobility, just like Manning. But, like we said, it's all about who fits the mold of the team at this point. All these teams are grading their draft picks, and they are going to go after the guy who they grade, to be the highest, similar to Mitch Trubisky with the Bears. You could argue, and we have on this show in the past, that the Bears were fleeced by the 49ers a little bit, but the Bears believed in Trubisky, graded him highest in that draft class, and went up and took him. So if they feel that way about Rosen, that might be the case. But Robert, I will respect your pick of Saquon Barkley in the second slot. We're going to move on to the New York Jets. This pick was acquired from the Indianapolis Colts in a trade that saw the two teams swap the third and sixth picks. So it is the Jets, and I will be taking Sam Darnold. So there you go, Blake. If he doesn't fall to the Giants, then I believe he will go and be playing in the same stadium as the Giants, but on the New York Football Jets. We mentioned the turnover concerns in college. He threw for 13 interceptions, 26 touchdowns. That's a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And of the prospects currently, being talked about at the top of the draft, I would say that he's the least ready to assume the starting role at quarterback.
Yeah, Sam Darnold doesn't have the greatest stats, especially from last season. We expected more, but I think that he has what it takes to, us get into the role and learn. But with the Jets, you need to go right away, and that's going to be the most interesting part if the Jets do take Darnold, to see him shine in his first year, hopefully. But I think that what he did at USC, I think that he can capitalize on an opportunity in the NFL with being that go-to person.
Right, and we're two quarterbacks and a Barkley down. We're going to move on to the fourth pick, and it's back to Blake, and it is back to Cleveland again. This pick acquired from the Houston Texans with that kind of awkward Brock Osweiler situation. They got this pick from Houston, so take it away, Blake.
Well, I think that Cleveland clearly is making the statement that they want to rebuild through the draft. Now, like I said with the first pick, picking a quarterback and having Tyrod Taylor, I think that the Cleveland Browns will select Quentin Nelson, the guard out of Notre Dame, to help protect their quarterback because they haven't had a quarterback for years and years. So once they do get their potential quarterback, they definitely do not want to see him go down with injury. And Nelson, he excels at moving defenders off the ball, which would be good with a mobile quarterback like Tyrod Taylor. And he's been said to be one of the best recent prospects in modern history for the offensive line position. Whether that, leads to be true or not, we'll soon find out in this upcoming season. But they definitely need to protect their quarterback now that they have their biggest hopes for quarterback that they've had in a long, long time.
Right, Robert. What do you feel? With this fourth pick and Cleveland getting 2 of the first 4, you take your quarterback. Is it right to go after a offensive line position? You're going to be without Joe Thomas for the first time in a long time. Is this the right direction for the team?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns definitely need to fill that void, and Joe Thomas was such a presence on the offensive line that Quentin Nelson could definitely fill that role right away. And what the Browns, I thought, were going to do, before these last few weeks was draft a quarterback, and whoever it would be, Darnold or Allen or Rosen or Mayfield, and then draft Barkley at 4. But I feel like the Giants need Barkley at 2. So, I mean, the obvious pick now would be to protect that quarterback that you get. And if they really wanted to get Barkley, they could draft him first and then take a quarterback 4th. But, I mean, then you lose some possible big-time moments, which the Browns end up missing out on quarterbacks all the time.
Right. They're leaving it up to chance, something that they really don't want to have to do. But I have a long-winded opinion on Quentin Nelson. I've watched a lot of tape, a lot of his games at Notre Dame. And I will say, by far, to me, this guy's the best player in the draft. He grades out the best. He's the most NFL ready. He, like you said, Blake, tireless motor, works really hard through his blocks, never quits on a play. Pretty big guy, and I think comparable to a Zach Martin on the Dallas Cowboys. And I believe he will be a first-year Pro Bowler. You're really talking about a guy who has a tremendous amount of upside, and there's a little bit of injury concern in the NFL that'll remain to be seen, but whoever ends up with Nelson will have a quality guard. And if it's the Cleveland Browns, that's great. They'll be able to protect their number 1 overall selection for the future, and also Tyrod Taylor, who figures to be stepping in at quarterback for them this next year. So we're going to go to the 5th pick. It is Robert back on the microphone, and we see another quarterback.
Yeah, I'm looking at Josh Allen out of Wyoming, and this is a literal boom or bust situation. I mean, Allen's got a cannon, and he is coming out of Wyoming. We've talked about it before, that he hasn't really faced top talent, but neither did Carson Wentz. And this might be a similar situation where Allen could be that prototypical Wentz persona that you might want on the Broncos, especially with John Elway there. He might be able to groom Allen into making these deep passes and maybe some clutch situations and get him a couple wins. And he might be able to get them some wins next season right away. So that would be pretty good for the Broncos, because they need to do something. They were near the bottom of the league in points and passing, and they have Simeon, Osweiler, and Lynch, which, I mean, those aren't really guys that you can go and look for the future with. So
no, when we talk about the poor history the Cleveland Browns have in drafting quarterbacks, really Denver's kind of in the same boat. They didn't draft Peyton Manning. They ended up, obviously getting him for their Super Bowl run. But I think that they're going to have to get this one right. And the problem is Josh Allen is exactly that boomer bust type of player. You brought up Carson Wentz's name, and this draft class, although it's deeper at the quarterback position at the top, it reminds me of that draft class in the sense that we had both Wentz and Goff taken 1-2, and there were a lot of questions about both of those guys. It's too early to tell, but it looks as though if they remain healthy, both of those guys will be the solution for their teams at quarterback. Are we going to see some of these guys that a lot of scouts are doubting really blossom in the league once they're given the opportunity? Or are we kind of the mindset that, we think most of these guys might be flops in the future and that they are, as a whole, an overrated draft class?
Well, this draft class, when it comes to quarterbacks, reminds me a lot of the Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, RG3, granted the injury problems, but he was good his first year. And I see a lot of that as we go through these names like Josh Allen, for example. They all have a lot of talent and they're going to bring a lot to their teams right out of the gates. So there's some bright futures out there, and we may even see a couple of rookie Pro Bowl quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's quite the speculation. You know, it's really going to be a wide range of opinions, and you're going to hear all the draft talk tomorrow and Friday, because they'll be talking about Thursday and also through the weekend about, oh well, you know, this quarterback's going to do this and that quarterback's going to do that, and it's really, to me, mostly about team fit in this particular class. It's what the needs are of certain teams, because a lot of people don't think there are quite a few teams that don't believe that Baker Mayfield is even close to a first round prospect or NFL ready at this point. He's too much of a wild card. And then there are, you have Cleveland and you have Miami, who we'll get to here in a little bit, that think, hey, Mayfield's NFL ready. So you've got a broad perspective of opinions, and we'll just see how it plays out. But we've got 3 quarterbacks off the board now, Quentin Nelson and Saquon Barkley. So that leaves the Indianapolis Colts at 6. That is my selection. And this is solely based on the top 5 and how that went down in our mock draft, I'm going to say that the Colts keep this pick and take Bradley Chubb. They will not have the decision whether to draft Chubb or Quentin Nelson in this case. So the defensive end out of NC State seems like the logical pick for Indy. Your hope is that you try to craft him into the next Dwight Freeney, as Blake's been trying to tell me this entire time. Oh, this guy's the next Freeney. That's what Indy would try and do. They switched their defenses to a 3-4. That's conducive to 2 edge rushers. So this would definitely address a glaring need on defense, although you could make the argument that Indy needs a linebacker more. But at 6, and the fact that with this setup, there's a less likelihood that Buffalo would want to trade up to this position to draft a quarterback. I think that Bradley Chubb makes the most sense. He was tied for 10th in sacks last season on the Wolfpack, and he's just an overall big presence on that defensive side of the ball.
He is a very good defender, and the Indianapolis Colts have lacked that defensive end since Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis have exited and retired and everything like that. But really, when you look at the Indy defense too, who have they had since that? They've had Eric Walden, who is less than impressive, to put it politely. And then they did have linebacker Pat Angerer, who for a while led the NFL in tackles, but he faded out, and they need somebody. And Bradley Chubb could be that guy. It's just going to boil down to how hard does he want to work and how much does he want it.
Right, we're going to keep it right here with Blake. Move on to the 7th overall pick in the NFL draft. It's Tampa Bay.
I had Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver out of Alabama, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His touchdown numbers are a little less than impressive, with only 5 touchdowns last season. However, he did get a good amount of yards with 967 yards, just short of that 1,000-yard mark. He's a very strong wide receiver and would be a good complement to Mike Evans and help develop a good wide receiver core for Jameis Winston, as Winston has struggled to make the playoffs in his first few seasons there in Tampa Bay. This may give him the versatility and the options that he needs. And, well, if not, then Winston may be on his way out. But that's a story for another day. He's got average size, he's quick, he has good lateral speed, he can really run down the field, and is pretty agile as well.
He, to me at least, kind of reminds me of an Antonio Brown type as his ultimate ceiling. But I was joking with Blake before the show. I said, this pick to me seems a little out of place, but this reminds me of the Darius Hayward-Bay pick from years past. An undersized receiver who is not going to be able to win jump balls and is going to really have to rely on his football IQ and route running ability. So that's really the outlook for Ridley, although it would make for an interesting receiving core in Tampa with Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, and Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, Tampa's loaded. I do like that pick. I like Calvin Ridley going to the Bucs, and trying to see if Jameis Winston can really power through and throw to Evans and Ridley. And I mean, their core is really strong down there, even with tight ends. But I'm gonna move on to my pick because I got the Bears, and
I'm sorry, Robert.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this one because the Bears, they really revamped their offense, but their defense is all their team needs. But I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick makes the most sense out of Alabama, safety. I really like this pick. They desperately need a stronger secondary. They already have Eddie Jackson, who is also from Alabama, so it makes sense to pair Fitzpatrick with Jackson. And actually in 2016 at Alabama, Eddie Jackson ended up going down with an injury. And then Fitzpatrick continued the season getting 6 interceptions, 2 of them for touchdowns. So it would be really cool to see both of them in the Windy City.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And also, you mentioned former teammates potentially playing on the same NFL team. You have, at least at safety for the Bears, a Jackson and an Amos anchoring the safety positions. But now they're going to add another cornerback hey, it's something that the Bears need to address because they had aging cornerbacks in the past, and maybe Fitzpatrick can give him some juice at that position.
Yeah, and the Bears really shined in the offseason with Trubisky and getting a lot of talent for him going forward, but I'm excited to see if Fitzpatrick can, get into the whole defense and give the Bears a little more, in that side of the ball.
Absolutely. The Bears really need to have high hopes for this season because past ones have not been very successful, at least under the old coach John Fox. We're going to move to the 9th pick. It is San Francisco. They have a quarterback. Not a lot of people expected that they would be in the situation where they're not looking to draft a quarterback in this class, obviously acquiring Jimmy Garoppolo from the Patriots midway through last season. So I'm going to turn over to the defensive side of the ball. We're going to have back-to-back safety players, or secondary players, I should say, taken. My pick's Denzel Ward. He's a bit undersized. That's going to be a concern, and he plays off the ball. So at corner from Ohio State, he only had 2 interceptions last year, averaged about 3.5 tackles per game. Those numbers less than impressive, but he grades out as a pretty strong pro prospect. The big knock, again, I will stress this, is he's 5'10", and that's really concerning because the NFL is all about size, Blake.
Well, that just amazes me because I'm a shorter individual myself. I'm 5'10", so it makes me wonder, imagining somebody of my size jumping for jump balls with receivers that are, 6'3", 6'4". But then again, if he can make up with that with a good vertical, or could let his speed get the best of those wide receivers, then maybe he would be a good fit. But it really looks negative that he is undersized. However, we've seen instances in the past where that hasn't mattered. And if the San Francisco 49ers can round out that defense with the offense that they already have, they could be a dangerous team.
Yeah, and I will say this, it is my pick. I pretty much downplayed it the entire time. I was like, I started off with all the knocks on Denzel Ward. He has a lot of positives, though. He's coming from a university that has a great history of producing NFL cornerbacks, Eli Apple being a bust, but certainly Bradley Roby being one of those good, solid NFL starters. And, who knows, Denzel Ward might be in that discussion as one of the better cornerback prospects to make it out of Ohio State. We're going to keep it again in the secondary for the 10th pick. It's the Oakland Raiders. John Gruden will be making his first selection as head coach. Blake, who do we have here?
Well, as everybody knows who knows John Gruden loves his defenses.
He loves quarterbacks too,
And
Blake.
he loves his quarterbacks, but he wants to chase after those quarterbacks that he loves so much. So that's my strategy behind this, looking at it through a different lens. And he's going to pick Derwin James, the safety out of Florida State University, who was nicknamed Pooh Bear by his mother for being a chubby little guy as a kid. But he's a proven leader. He spends hours studying film. He's quite the presence in the locker room. And he would add some help to that secondary there in Oakland that could help round out again, in a similar instance, that offense led by Derek Carr. And as they say, defense wins championships. So it's a great possibility that Derwin James could kind of help make a better balance there in Oakland, as we've seen has been a little bit lacking over the past couple of years.
Right. I'm going to give you some advice. I would not call him chubby little guy to his face, Blake.
Well, I cannot say I can't say I would do that, because quite honestly, that wouldn't be the safest bet.
You don't think your 5'10" frame can hold up?
I don't think so. I'm not going to go up against somebody who benches twice as much as I weigh. So
Fair enough. We'll keep it at that. Derwin James, certainly a guy who could play a variety of positions and did at Florida State. Pretty much played everything from defensive end and back in that system. Although it was a system that was failing as Jimbo Fisher was seeing the end and his team pretty much decompose around him in his final season. But Derwin James does make for a very interesting pick at 10. Now we have the 11th pick. It is the Miami Dolphins on the clock, and they were a team that I mentioned a little bit ago were in the running for Baker Mayfield if he were to fall. But Robert's looking in another direction.
Yeah, I mean, you get Baker Mayfield going early, and Josh Rosen falls right into their laps. I think that the Bills are also looking for a quarterback with the next pick, but if the Dolphins can steal Rosen, I think that would be really great for them. At UCLA, he had a lot better stats than Sam Darnold did when you're talking about the Pac-12. But I like Rosen in their passing game. The Dolphins, they're a lot worse in the passing game than the Broncos, which I talked about earlier. And they do have Ryan Tannehill, but I think they could use a fresh start. And I feel like they're kind of trying to get him going in a different direction too. A lot of injuries, a lot of problems for Tannehill.
Yeah, a lot of mediocrity as well at the quarterback position for Miami. Tannehill's a proven leader. However, with that devastating knee injury that he suffered last season, didn't see any action. Really, maybe it is time to turn the page if you're the Dolphins, and Josh Rosen would be an instant impact if they decided to go that way and select him out of UCLA. My selection at 12 is the Buffalo Bills. This pick was acquired from the Cincinnati Bengals in a trade earlier on, and I'm going to take Roquan Smith, linebacker out of Georgia. He was the anchor of a very, very ferocious defense under Kirby Smart's direction. Had 58 more tackles than the team's next highest tackles leader. If that doesn't speak to his dominance and leadership ability on the field, I don't think anything else does, Blake.
That's just incredible. 58 more tackles than the next leader. It sounds like he's everywhere on that field. He's doing all the work for his entire team, and if you could get a guy like that in the NFL, then you've got something special and should definitely run with it. I'm actually a little bit surprised that he's not going earlier in this draft with numbers like that.
Right, and the knock on him is that he's undersized. That's a very common theme we're seeing in this draft, is that some of these defensive players lack the NFL size, but you can easily make up for that with heart and determination and being on the right place and the right time out on the field. Roquan Smith, a guy who has proven that he can do that. And, Robert kind of took that quarterback selection away from me in Buffalo with the Rosen pick. Wouldn't rule out Buffalo maybe swapping picks with Miami at some point. It is a possibility, but I had to go with what I was given, and I think Roquan Smith would be a great fit for Buffalo's defense and really bringing them into the conversation for one of the elite defenses in the NFL. So that's my pick. Blake's going to stay on the defensive side of the ball with the 13th overall selection, which is Washington's.
The unlucky number 13 for the Washington Redskins. They are going to select Daron Payne, the defensive tackle from Alabama. Ryan Kerrigan, who's been doing everything for that Redskins defense, could finally get his help. Give a great dual threat for that Washington front line. And he's really good. What he's known for is backing up the center, just pushing through those blocks, shedding through them, doing everything he can. And what was interesting to me was Daron Payne could bench 400 pounds in high school. Now, that's almost 4 of me. That's incredible.
I like our the Blake hound dog scale. How many Blakes can we bench press? We should have had that stat in here for every single player drafted. But I like that. Yes, very strong guy, has great hands, and really the trend. Another one of the trends in the NFL is bringing in guys at the defensive tackle position that can shed blocks and pass rush. And this would be a guy that could do just that, Robert.
Yeah, I really like that pick, Blake, but I'm going to move over to the Packers with the 14th pick. And, they have Clay Matthews at middle linebacker, but Tremaine Edmunds would absolutely help that team out a ton. Mike McCarthy really wants another linebacker in this draft, and if Edmunds falls to this spot, I think that's a great pick. 5th in tackles, 10th in sacks. Last season, he has the size, speed, explosiveness. I was looking at NFL comparisons. Brian Urlacher. I mean, Bears guy. I don't want to see him going to the NFC North rival, the Packers, but if the Packers are looking for a middle linebacker, that would be the pick.
Yes, Edmunds, a great form tackler in the middle of a defense. He is one of those guys that is not undersized for the position, which is great news for the Green Bay Packers, and really could anchor that team going forward. Another franchise that needs some help on the defensive side of the ball, their defensive future in doubt. Really having to rely on Aaron Rodgers on the past few seasons. We're going to move on to 15. Arizona. This pick's kind of awkward for them. They're right in the middle of the first round here, and quarterback is listed as an obvious need, but unless they're going to stretch and go with a Lamar Jackson or a Mason Rudolph, which I think they could get him much later, potentially even in the 3rd round, I think you have to go with a cornerback out of Louisville. Jair Alexander only played in 6 games last year due to suffering a broken hand, which is not good news. The Cardinals don't need any more injury concerns, especially with people that they're bringing into their franchise. But he's also 5'10", like Denzel Ward, another undersized cornerback, but he plays more on the ball than Ward does. Bump and run coverage could serve him better in the league, trying to defend those big bodies like an Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals would want a quarterback at that spot, but if you have 4 quarterbacks already going in the top 14 and Lamar Jackson isn't exactly the great quarterback that you want on the Cardinals passing offense, you're not going to dip down to Mason Rudolph just yet. Look for him in later rounds, but that's a great pick with cornerback for the Cardinals.
Right. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. We're halfway through now. We're going to go to the 16th selection. It's the Baltimore Ravens. Main team needs are wide receiver, tight end, and inside linebacker. I think Blake's pick addresses one of those concerns.
Yes, Rashaan Evans, the linebacker from Alabama. We're starting to see a theme there, but Alabama is a great program for developing players on both sides of the ball. He's an All-American 5-star prospect, and since Ray Lewis, Baltimore hasn't had their linebacker. So could this be the next Ray Lewis? We don't mean to assume, but he's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and definitely brings a lot to the table for that Baltimore D.
Yeah, this guy, not only could he bench a lot of Blakes, he could eat Blake too. So we have that going for us. Great pick. Yeah, I think that the Ravens D needs that edge back that Ray Lewis gave them. And certainly a guy from Alabama has a history on the defensive side of the ball of producing some fantastic NFL talent. we'll see what Baltimore can do. They also have some needs on offense. Dez Bryant just turned down a multi-year deal earlier today to go to Baltimore, so there's still some concern there, but here's an anchor to your defense that you can get in the first round and really projects well going forward. My team is up next, the LA Chargers. However, I will not be picking for them, sadly. It's Robert's turn, so we're going to give him the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry to take away your pick, but I'm going to hopefully do a great job in picking Mike McGlinchey out of Notre Dame.
I approve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Team captain in consecutive years. He's a leader. He's going to be a great offensive tool and be able to block for Rivers and whoever else comes down the line. But he has strength, quick feet, athleticism. I think he is a guy you really want. If he doesn't go earlier, this could be a great pick for the Chargers.
Yeah, I like the selection here. There was talk that if the Chargers weren't taking some talent up front on the defensive tackle side of things with potentially Vita Vea from Washington, that they would look for some more offensive line help. And I think McGlinchey, again, you mentioned 2-year captain. I watched a lot of Quentin Nelson, which means I watched a lot of Mike McGlinchey and those guys double teaming on people like Bradley Chubb. So McGlinchey, the knock on him is that he's really not that strong yet, and also he can get beat around the edge by elite speed rushers in college, and obviously they only get better in the NFL. So he projects over to the right side of the ball his first year. He's an instant starter, but he would be right tackle. There's no way he's ready for the left side of the offensive line yet. Might need to spend a couple years there, or could just be a right tackle for life in LA. So another solid selection. Hopefully my pick for Seattle at 18 is also good. It is Marcus Davenport, defensive end from UTEP. Had 8.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles last season. He's a big guy, 6'7", 255. So a lot of size coming at you and can really get to the quarterback, Blake.
He could get to the quarterback. Not only that, but with that height, he may be able to JJ swat some of those passes down to the ground if he can't get to him in time. So that's definitely a factor, and he could be able to not only put a beating on the quarterback, but not let anything by him either.
Right. This particular class lacks pass rushers, and so once you get Chubb and now Davenport off the board, the depth really starts to thin. So this selection for Seattle could rush the actions of some other teams here later in the first round. But we're going to go over to the other side of the ball for the 19 selections. Not going to affect the Cowboys one bit, so they have one of the elite pass rushers in the league, DeMarcus Lawrence. But we're going to go with a pick at wide receiver for the team from Texas.
For the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to say goodbye to Dez Bryant and hello to DJ Moore, the wide receiver from Maryland. He is smaller than Dez at 5'9", kind of a similar build to T.Y. Hilton of Indianapolis, but if he could get some speed and good route running going there in the Lone Star State, then Dallas could have their replacement in a bit of a different body.
Yeah, this one's up for both of you guys. What do you think about Stephon Diggs? Went to the same school as DJ Moore, same body type, and to me is an instant comparison to this particular wide receiver.
Well, I mean, with Diggs, you have the Minnesota Miracle, so DJ Moore is going to kind of have some big shoes to fill there. But if he can pull off the Stephon Diggs and come up clutch in some late game moments, as well as getting some good yardage after the catch, then that'll be a good asset for Dallas.
Yes, that is at least the comparison that I think fits DJ Moore and isn't putting too much pressure on the guy. I wouldn't want to stick the Darius Hayward-Bay tag on him. That was a long time ago. But again, speedster from Maryland, solid selection at number 19. Number 20 is Detroit. The Lions need some pass rushers potentially, and Robert thinks that they could use someone up the middle.
Yes, Vita Vea out of Washington. You talked about him earlier with the 17th pick with the Chargers. They also need a pass rusher, but I feel like they're going to go more the offensive route, offensive blocking. The Lions would pick Vea, star potential. He's a huge guy, 6'4", 350 pounds. Can you imagine that, lining up and coming at you if you're Aaron Rodgers or Mitch Trubisky, Kirk Cousins, just seeing a big guy like that come off the edge. He is going to line up in the middle, but they, at Washington, they lined him up at the end so he could get through the middle or around the sides and get to the quarterback any way that he wants to.
Why are the Detroit Lions so set on taking defensive line players in the draft? It seems never-ending, the list. You had
Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, well, that was, yes, a long time ago. But we've got Sue and Nick Fairley. This is off the top of my head. Nick Fairley, Zeke Ansah. So a ton of guys that they've taken and really haven't worked out. Is Vita Vea really going to be the difference?
He could be the difference, and granted, Detroit is really kicking themselves, no pun intended, from that old Ndamukong Suh pick. But if Vita Vea can just keep it clean,
I just got that, Blake. That was solid.
If he could have that intimidation factor, that would be something that would be an advantage over an experienced, seasoned quarterback like Aaron Rodgers.
Right, and we're going to go to my pick real quick, winding down on the Fantasy Express for the last time this semester. The 21st selection from the Buffalo Bills is the Cincinnati Bengals. So I will take James Daniels, the center from Iowa. He's versatile, and he comes from a great school for producing offensive line talent, talking about Marshall Yanda, Brandon Scherf, and Brian Bulaga, just to name a few guys from Iowa. And really that addresses the biggest need for the Bengals. So that was a no-brainer selection for me. We're going to move right along back to Blake at 22. And hey, it's the Bills. I just mentioned them.
Yes, and the Bills, who just lost Tyrod Taylor, and their only quarterback option right now is Nathan Peterman, Mr. 5-interception first half himself. The Buffalo Bills will need a replacement, no questions asked. That being said, they will take the quarterback from Louisville. Lamar Jackson is going to Buffalo. Like I said, Tyrod Taylor's gone. They do like that athletic quarterback like they had in Taylor, and so Lamar Jackson fits them perfectly. And really, I just don't see anybody else going to Buffalo at that time.
I think you might need to explain that one to me just a little bit. You're going to take Tyrod Taylor, ship him away, and bring in Lamar Jackson, who, if he's lucky, will be Tyrod Taylor.
Well, he may not be Tyrod Taylor, but at least he's better than Nathan Peterman. And if they could just get a couple of wins and a few less interceptions, then it may be, unfortunately, taking the lesser of two evils in this situation.
Right. I'm just giving you a hard time. I think that Lamar Jackson would be electric, if nothing else, to watch in that the shotgun formation in Buffalo. But again, you're kind of taking a player that you just let go, but one that's unproven in the league in Lamar Jackson. So a gamble for Buffalo. We'll see if, number one, they take him, and two, if they do, if it'll pay off. That'll remain to be seen. The New England Patriots are selecting 23rd. This pick is from the LA Rams. Take it away, Robert.
Yeah, I have cornerback Mike Hughes going to the Patriots from the University of Central Florida.
National champs.
National champs, for sure. But yeah, I mean, he had 44 tackles, 4 interceptions. He's a return guy as well. Presence in the secondary. The Patriots could use a little bit of defense. And I think that they could have Hughes, create some electricity on the defensive end in the return game. So I think it's a nice pick for the Patriots if they can't, trade up and get a quarterback.
Right, the Patriots going through a little bit of an overhaul in their secondary. Mike Hughes, one of the most NFL ready prospects at cornerback. Really a deep cornerback draft class, at least in the first round. We've been through a number of them already. Another guy from the state of Florida, Mike Hughes, at 23 for the Patriots. 24th pick is mine. Carolina needs wide receiver help, cornerback help, and defensive end help, pass rushing help, however you determine that. I'm going to take Harold Landry from Boston College, another team that produces a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball, in particular the defensive front. Luke Kuechly, a notable alum, but Harold Landry had 16 and a half sacks his junior season, so not this past year, but the year before, and he shows the ability to get to the quarterback. And again, with this class being so tight in terms of pass rushing, Harold Landry could pay dividends for the Carolina Panthers, and I think that's where they take this pick at 24. So the 25th selection belongs to the Tennessee Titans and their new uniforms. Who will get to wear one of those, Blake?
Well, the winner of the new uniform is Christian Kirk, the wide receiver from Texas A&M, who is also a dual-purpose punt returner. With 3,000 all-purpose yards and 40 touchdowns last season, he'll give another weapon to Marcus Mariota and maybe help develop their playoff run that they've been trying to deepen, as they were in the playoffs last year. And possibly this may be a bit of a jump to conclusions, but could he be the next Devin Hester?
I'm going to go with no, because, first of all, to me, the eye test, Devin Hester, a lot smaller stature, a little bit more electric. But I do like where you're going with the returner. Hey, who couldn't use one? They do have a Dory Jackson that handles most of those responsibilities for the Titans. But you can never hurt to have another playmaker and somebody who can play more than just wide receiver, although they got done taking Corey Davis this past year in the draft. So you really think another team that, like your Tampa Bay selection at 7, is just going to try and make that receiving core as developed and elite as possible. So an interesting pick there at 25. We're going to move on over to Robert at 26, who's picking for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, and, just going off of that last pick, Devin Hester just, retired for the Chicago Bears. So shout out to my man Hester, really great career. I just want to, give a nice warm shout out to him. But yeah, another team that Hester played with, the Atlanta Falcons, looking on the defensive side, Taven Bryan out of Florida, he has rare athleticism. A big weakness is his lack of instincts, but he can play inside and outside, a ton of tackles in the SEC, and I think he's going to stay south.
Right, there's going to be a lot of raw talent here towards the end of the first round, and then you're going to get into the wild card selections of the second and third round. Some of those guys are going to pay off. Others won't. I do like the fact that Taven Bryan, again, playing in the big football conference, if you will. Even though they are the SEC, they definitely have the most, a lot of people at least say that they have the most NFL potential and just sheer number of guys that end up getting drafted to the league. So a good pick there. At 27, this is kind of a no-brainer. The number one need for the New Orleans Saints is a tight end, so I'm going to take Hayden Hurst out of South Carolina. A big body, 6'5", 250. His main competition in this draft is the tight end from Penn State, Mike Gesicki, another guy who has phenomenal ball skills, great athleticism, but I think that South Carolina plays it safe, takes Hayden Hurst, and kind of keeps them close to home. Saints aren't that far from Carolina, so we'll go with that one. We've got, let's see here, five more picks. At 28, the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock.
The Pittsburgh Steelers are in need of a safety, and Justin Reed may be the safest option out of Stanford. He's got big shoes to fill if he wants to be on that Pittsburgh defense, but he's the brother of Eric Reed, so maybe the genetics are on his side in that regard. He offers excellent versatility and has great football intelligence that'll really help him step onto that field sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you mentioned Eric Reed being his brother. Hey, the genes are there, right? Right, Blake?
That's right, and like Clark Kellogg always says, you can't run away from your DNA.
Okay, sure. Never heard that one, but thank you, Blake, for that. Can't run away from your DNA. All right. Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that's next. Robert's pick at 29. An offensive tackle you're going to go with.
Yes, I'm going to go with the tackle Colton Miller out of UCLA. He was he had a big contribution to Josh Rosen's success, partially attributed to Colton Miller, but he was able to cover that blind side. He has a lot of confidence there. He gave Rosen a ton of help, so maybe he can give Bortles some time to pass to his receivers.
Yeah, Bortles is going to need all the protection he can get because obviously he struggled with accuracy, but mostly a depth play for the Jaguars. They've really cultivated that offensive line, and I think this just boosts their talent at that position. I'm going to stay on the offensive line for the 30th pick. It's Minnesota's. I'm going to go with Isaiah Wynn, listed as a tackle out of Georgia, but only 6'2", 302. He played guard his junior and sophomore seasons for the Bulldogs, so I think he's going to go back inside and be a guard for the Vikings just because of that 6'2" frame. Still could eat Blake, but not as big as some of the other guys. So the last two picks, we got 31 and 32, New England and Philadelphia, the two Super Bowl teams from last season. So Blake, go right ahead.
Well, for the Patriots, I see this as more of an important pick than most would because Tom Brady is aging, whether we want to admit to it or not. He may or may not have 7 years left. And while he is still in the league, the Patriots need to protect Brady. So with Tyrell Crosby, the offensive tackle from Oregon, with a big body, the good composition of mass and length will give that protection to Brady and maybe make him a little more comfortable standing back there in the pocket.
Right, and again, a team that's disassembling, they need a lot of help on the offensive line to protect the aging Brady because we know a defender gets off the ball, goes at Brady, he is going to curl up into a ball and take the sack because he just can't be taking that many hits at his later age. So very much addresses a team need for the Patriots. And last but not least, we have Robert's selection for Mr. Irrelevant of the first round.
Yes, I have someone who is definitely relevant for the Philadelphia Eagles, Mr. Courtland Sutton out of SMU, over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in his sophomore year. He also played basketball too. I'm not going to go over those stats. Not too great. 3 points per game. But yeah, I mean, a ton of speed and strength. He can get up the field. It's going to give Wentz a ton of speed, down the sides. So I like that. Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar, playing for the Eagles, so he's not going to be able to get there right away, but I think Sutton could be a pretty good pick.
Right, another team that would just be adding on to their deep well of talent. Philadelphia, really a selection that they could go anywhere with. Courtland Sutton, a great selection out of SMU, and really, if I remember correctly, SMU only had about 6 scholarship players on their basketball team at one point this year. So, Rob, do you think Courtland Sutton could have played a bigger role on that team? Maybe give him a chance to shine in the winter as well as on the gridiron?
Yeah, maybe he can take his talents to the 76ers and, give them a little boost in this championship run if he gets drafted by the Eagles. But, I'm going to hold off on that championship run.
This is all part of the process. That is that would be quite a process if that's the thought process, if you will, on that one. Alrighty, we've gone through the first round, made all the selections. I want to give the open mic to you guys. Any final thoughts? Things that you're really looking forward to for the 2018 NFL Draft.
Well, one player that stands out to me that may not go in this first round is Jesse Bates out of Wake Forest. He's actually from fairly local to here, Fort Wayne. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. And overall, he has impressive fluidity for a safety, and he's really smooth in his style of play. So may not be the shining star, but he's definitely somebody to watch for.
Yeah, I got two things. For the Bears, if they don't take a corner or a defensive end or someone on defense, I would really hope they don't take an offensive player. That would be kind of, pointless because of their off season and what they did to accomplish that. And number two, I just want to see how many quarterbacks are actually taken in the top 10. That's going to be the most interesting part, to see if these teams are actually going to go with, their team needs. I know most of them don't need quarterbacks, but they're going to want to, groom themselves for the coming seasons. I just want to see how many actually get taken in the top 10.
Absolutely a major storyline for this NFL draft. And since it's our last show, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys for your thoughts. How did you like it, Blake, coming in at the end of this semester and being the third guy on our team?
Well, it was great, and I can't thank you guys enough for giving me the opportunity to come on and get a little bit more experience. It's always good to talk some sports, and although we may butt heads at times, it's healthy to have some good debate on air and give the audience a chance to hear some different perspectives.
Right. It's great that you were here with us for the time that you were, and I'm sure the show will be in good hands for the future. Robert?
Yeah, I've been doing the Fantasy Express with you for a year now. It was great, getting into the show for a few weeks to start off. It was really nerve-wracking at first because, I was an anchor and reporter for Live at 5 here on WCRD, and it was more just scripted writing and reading. But this gave me an opportunity to talk off the cuff and, shine on air with interpersonal skills. And I have my Chick-fil-A bottle that just knocked over.
Interpersonal skills as Robert knocks over his drink. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great opportunity for me as well. Thank you, Stephen, for giving me that chance to do that. So I'm just really thankful for that. And I'm excited to work with Blake next season. But Stephen, do you have any last words? This was a great thing that you've put on, and we're going to carry this legacy.
Absolutely. No, that's great. That's the intention. It's been an absolute privilege working with Robert for the entire year, and obviously Blake as well. Couldn't have asked for two better anchors, analysts on the Fantasy Express. Like I said, the show is in great hands going forward. It's been a nice 2-year run. Hey, who knows? Hopefully I'll be around the area. Maybe can get back for a show or two in the future. But the main goal is to keep the Fantasy Express on the airwaves at WCRD for years to come. So we'll be back in the fall, minus me, talking more fantasy football, helping you win your leagues. That's the goal. That was the goal from the get-go. And we'll sign off with that being said. I'm Stephen Sobek, your host. Blake Dollier, Blake the Hound Dog. I can't forget the Hound Dog, Dollier, and Robert Segovia here across the desk from me. It's the last show for the semester. We'll be back next fall. You've been listening to the Fantasy Express. Have a good night.